Morning. Can you hear me? Yeah, lovely. Good morning, Sophia. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak to you today. It's a pleasure to be here. My talk today is on the e-buyer's mind, which sounds a little bit sort of science fiction-y. If I'd called it, why I like to go shopping on the internet, you probably wouldn't have turned up in such numbers. But what I want to do today is to talk to you about e-commerce, online retail, e-buyers, e-shoppers, etc., and try and put some context on the behaviours that we exhibit when we go online to do shopping, where it fits in our sort of everyday lives and online lives, and also look at what we're buying, why we're buying it, what the motivations are for buying those certain goods, and also where advertising fits into that. How does it contribute to the overall online shopping experience, where advertisers could do more, where they could do less, how to think about it differently. So the first question I have for you, and I should probably take control of the phaser that I have here. Hang on. Wonderful, there we are. That's the title. Hands up who likes shopping. Mainly women, okay, it's good. I like shopping too. Shopping is part of our fiscal, our cultural heritage. We make films about shopping. We talk about shopping. We love to buy things. It's part of human nature to exchange goods for gifts, for money, etc., etc. I like this quote by a lady called Bo Derek, if some of you are old enough to remember a film with her in called 10, many years ago. I think that sums up quite nicely how important shopping is to us. So, one of the big misconceptions I think about online behaviour is it's somehow different to the behaviour we exhibit every day in the high street or our homes. And the fact is it's not. When we go online, we don't suddenly become robots or start speaking in binary or something like that. We behave very much as we've always done for thousands of years. The way that behaviour manifests itself is slightly different because of the tools we can use to do that. But generally speaking, what we do is exactly the same. And those behaviours are thus. We like to communicate. We like to look for information. We like to entertain ourselves. We like to indulge in commerce. And we like to go and walk about and have a bit of discovery. It's just like real life. There's nothing different or unusual about it. And online retail fits into that very nicely. It takes up around 10% of our time online. Depending which country you go to, it varies slightly. But it's important because if you think about how much time you spend maybe not on the internet doing shopping, it's probably less than 10%. Well, I'd hope so anyway. And unsurprisingly, ad spend doesn't always reflect this. As ever, advertisers tend to follow consumers. They get there a bit later than the consumer's already doing. These are figures taken from the UK. So around 40% of all ad spend online goes to the portals, the place you get your email, look at a bit of news perhaps, usually passing through to do something else. 45% goes to the ad network, so big swathes of sites joined together, easy to buy, often some very clever tracking stuff in there as well. Other publishers take around 15% of revenue, so that's newspapers, magazine sites, that sort of thing. And e-commerce takes probably less than 1% of all ad revenues. Now, it's not really a complaint, it's just an observation. The reason it tends to happen like this is a number of factors. One, online advertising is driven hugely by reach. So I need to get all my advertising on a place I can reach lots of people easily being the imperative point there. And also the idea of advertising within a retail environment for a lot of media agencies is not something they are traditionally familiar with doing. That tends to be the area of expertise for sales promotion agencies in the offline world. So online media agencies haven't generally tended to look at that as an area of opportunity. So, we wanted to investigate a few things. We wanted to look at online shopping habits. What are people buying? How much are they buying? Where are they buying it? What were their attitudes and motivations to buying those particular types of goods? What was it that they were doing, or how were they choosing to buy? What were the criteria upon which they made their choices? We also wanted to look at the consumer response to advertising. As I touched on earlier, there's not much advertising on e-commerce sites, and actually there's a very big opportunity there because people's response to advertising in a commercial environment is surprisingly positive. And obviously look at the opportunity for advertisers and brands in general from that information. So we did some research. Before I just go into the research, I just wanted to just touch very briefly, and I promise this isn't really me selling, but I'm sure many of you are familiar with eBay, and you're familiar with eBay's heritage as an auction site. And it's important to note that eBay is no longer really just an auction site. Over half of the retailers on eBay are either small businesses or high street retailers, looking to find other ways of distributing their brand, looking to find new channels to market, in the same way that a brand will go into a department store and set up a concession because the footfall is there for them to take advantage of. And that's the way the business is moving. So it's not just about auctions anymore. And so we have three key customer sets, if you like. We have our buyers, we have our sellers, and we have our advertisers. Now, eBay is now in the advertising business as well. I'm not sure how many of you knew that, but we are. It's very new. It's probably about a year old, year and a half old. And the reason we've introduced advertising, obviously apart from to make some more money, was to ensure we can keep our costs low. So, we currently charge our sellers a fee for listing or setting up a shop. In order to be competitive in the market, we need to keep those costs low because obviously there are more e-commerce sites coming on stream, and advertising is one way of doing that. The other reason is that advertising actually, can sound a little bit cynical, but advertising actually does add to the shopping experience. If you can imagine going to your local shopping centre and it being devoid of every commercial message, it would seem very, very bare. Because if you remember, subliminally, there are points of sale material, there are promotions, there are posters in the windows, there are on the bus stops, etc. Shopping is an advertising experience as well as being one that you purchase things in. So advertising itself can really add value to that whole piece. So, the researchy bit. We undertook a study. This is, in fact, the second phase of the study, and this is really, really new. We first did this back in March this year, in fact, before I joined eBay, and we've just completed the second phase of it, literally last week. So I've only seen the preliminary results. So what you're seeing today is the top line results from both those surveys combined. We're still waiting on the diary results, so the qualitative piece is not actually with us yet. So please feel free to email me in the next few weeks, and I'll try and make sure you get access to that information. It was an online survey, 5,000 quantitative responses across UK, France, and Germany. In each country, 20 to 30 media diaries were also completed by people, again, trying to get more depth insight into why they were buying and what they were buying. So, the big headline is, we're all buying more online. Loads more. 8 out of 10 online consumers are buying more than they were 6 months ago. And in fact, this mimics the research we did 6 months ago, which said they were buying more than they did 6 months ago. So there's a general trend continuing. And there's two reasons for this, I believe. One is that there's a general trend and there's been an organic growth of confidence in the internet as a place that I can do business. And this is just going to continue because we're all becoming more comfortable. It becomes much more part of everyday life, as we've already seen. People will just go there and they'll get what they want. for the various reasons I'll come on to. The other reason is that we were in a recession. Now, I understand that Bulgaria as probably the only country in the EU that has managed to achieve either a flat or a small increase in growth, but the rest of Europe certainly has experienced a severe recession, and and that is a very good reason to go online, because one of the driving factors for people to go online is value. They know they can get a bargain or a good deal. We know that an online retailer has less startup costs, if you like, than a bricks and mortar retailer, so they can offer things at a lower price and distribution is easier. So those are the two factors on that. And what are people buying? Well, they're buying a massive range of things. I remember, if you went back a few years, people were just buying, DVDs and books. And suddenly, it's just exploded. And, clothing is one of the biggest purchases. And for an emotional purchase, that always surprises me. But it's true. People buy huge amounts of clothes online. They're happy to buy something on the basis of seeing it in a picture. Great. Even cars, still small scale, but I think, we'll see business models change, given the recent problems with the car industry and the internet becoming a much, much bigger marketplace to buy cars from. A few cultural differences here, not massive ones, but ones I wanted to point out, and they sort of help us conform to stereotypes. So the French, as we might expect, are always well dressed, and they buy the most fashion online compared to the Germans and the British. The Germans are very cerebral people. They buy more books. The British, who, if they aren't starting a fight, are listening to music, buy the most entertainment. And if we think about what the attitudes are, the key motivations for everyone, these are very broad, a broad look at this, is that trust, value, and selection are the key motivations for going online. The really, really strong ones. Trust, it sort of makes sense, it feels right. I'm not going to buy from someone I don't know. Selection's really important. I don't want to have to shop around everywhere. Which is interesting, because actually in the high street we need to move physically quite a way in order to get different types of goods, whereas on the internet we don't have to move at all, but it's still really important. And people feel they always get the best deal they can, and I think that's as much down to the fact they can get a good deal as that we all feel that we're in control of that process, and that's what we're doing it for. Now, there's something to be said about brands. There's been one could argue that the democratization of commerce, society, because of what the internet has allowed us to do, has made us more powerful, more easy to get knowledge, etc., would have led to the demise, or the demise in power of brands. Now, from this, I'm not going to say this is a complete picture at all, but I think it poses some interesting points. One is that brands still represent quality, which is good news. There is a perception that I can buy stuff unbranded, it won't be as good quality as a brand. And that actually, just because something's cheaper doesn't make it better. So that's good news for brand advertisers. But the flip side is perhaps another, a sort of a lessening, if you like, of the power of brands to convey certain values upon their user. And I think that's possibly something we're going to see increasingly, where people have so much more choice, they can question things much more easily, they want to feel that they are the ones in charge of how they are seen, and not necessarily by the brands they buy. I think we could have a debate about that for a long time, so I won't dwell on it. The other thing is that motivations to purchase vary by the type of purchase you're making. So, for example, factor in terms of, clothing, consumer electronics and home and garden. But actually the ability to spend more time researching stuff is more important for things like consumer electronics and home and garden. I suspect people are much more, they know what they want, and possibly driven there by magazines or television. Those discrepancies are actually more marked in these three categories. So, for example, for groceries, convenience is the driving factor. Whereas in entertainment, it's all about selection, breadth of choice. Now that all feels very intuitive. It's good, I want to be able to get my shopping easily. It's something I've got to do, otherwise I'll starve. I want the best selection possible of CDs and DVDs so I can make a choice. But it's good that we now have some empirical evidence to back that up. And actually, the other important thing is what drives people to choose their retail destination. Actually, it's to do with the frequency of purchase and the emotional connection they have. So we ask people, what is it that, how do you find the sites that you're looking for? And when you're talking about a purchase that is probably at least once a week, so we've got, groceries, entertainment, clothing, perhaps not every week for clothing, once a year for me. But generally they're much more frequent purchases and they are emotional rather. And that's much more to do with favourites. So you're much more likely to go to a favourite shop and you'll bookmark your favourite shop because that's where you get your groceries. Much like we all tend to shop within the same supermarket. Again, for entertainment, there's limited choice on the high street, but again, we've probably got an account set up somewhere and it makes sense to just go back there again and again to get those purchases. Whereas if you look at products that are less frequent and perhaps more based in logic decisions, such as price, technical specification and so on, they're much more dependent on search. So although favourites are in there, search is generally the preferred way to find those sites because they are much more, you don't buy a television more than once every few years, unless you're mad. Phones, again, home and garden, we don't buy sofas, we don't buy curtains on a regular basis. So search is a much more preferred way of finding those types of stores. Which leads us nicely on to the advertising piece. Now, I'm going to make an assumption that most of us in this room are involved in advertising in some way. And I remember when I started in advertising, and everyone talked about relevancy. And people continue to talk about relevancy being the key, because to serve a message to someone at the right time, in the right place, to the right person who's in the right life stage, who's ready to make a purchase, etc., 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 is the holy grail, has to be. Because otherwise, I wouldn't see adverts for dog food when I don't own a dog. That's an irrelevant, wasted ad. But, and you'd think that the internet would allow us to do that much better. Still see lots and lots of advertising out there that is hugely irrelevant. And context is a really important piece here. Because if we think about the behaviours I talked about earlier, communication, information, search, commerce, discovery, etc. When we think about what people are doing in those situations and what they might be receptive to from a brand and what they might not be receptive to a brand, if you think about those things then, and think about the sort of advertising people do and where they put it, it starts to make you think that actually there's something we could do a little bit better. So we asked the question, when are you most likely to pay attention to an advert? And funnily enough, when I'm doing a search, as in I'm looking for something, or I'm in a buying frame of mind, and signposts and so on will work for me, that's when people are more likely to pay attention. If I'm chatting to my friends, it will probably interrupt and get in the way, or I'm just not even interested because I'm talking to my friends. Now, that's not to say that portals and social networks do not have the value, because they obviously do. But it's important for advertisers to recognize that to throw a disproportionate amount of money into those channels because it's easy and it gives them lots of reach is perhaps not the best way to do it. I'm going to get in trouble for that now, aren't I? And actually, depending on what people want to buy, that also has some impact as well. So again, depending on the vertical, there's again an influence on how people notice ads. And the thing to call out here really is that, as per the earlier slide about when people are searching for certain things or using a search engine to find their store, we can see here that certainly phones and home and garden, so infrequent purchases, are more reliant on search. And you can see again, it's backed up here, that people are almost as likely to notice ads for those types of products on a search engine as they are on an e-commerce site. But what you're also seeing across the board is that around social networks and portals, it's not having the same impact. Before we run away with ourselves and sort of pretend that the internet is the most amazing thing ever, it's important to remember there are other media as well. There's this thing called TV. There are newspapers, there are magazines, and there's radio and blah-de-blah, outdoor, etc., etc., etc. And they all have a role to play. And I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought it gave some validation to what we were trying to do with the next slide, because there's no point pretending that TV is not the most powerful branding medium available to us, because it is. Sound and vision in our homes around content we love to watch. It's fairly compelling. Although what TV becomes over time as we watch more and more content online is debatable. But this shows us something. Is that the media itself, the context in which it's consumed, will all influence how impactful advertising is. And I was pleasantly surprised to see TV up there. But I was also really pleased to see that online displays, search and so on, were also on a par with traditional media like newspapers and so on. And it is always about the right balance and the right mix. It's not one or the other. So what's the opportunity for advertisers? Firstly, ensure you have digital distribution. Now that sounds a very basic thing to do, but a lot of people, a lot of brands rather, will set up a shop and do a little bit of search and hope that people will come and find them. You have to think about the internet as a distribution platform for your retail outlet as you do the high street. As I mentioned before, there are plenty of brands out there who take advantage of a department store because that's got the footfall, that's got the reputation, and they benefit by being there. Rather than try and get people to come to them, they go to where the people are. So a distribution strategy with key partners is really important. And you think about how people shop online for your product. As we've already seen, there are some differences, and those are very broad categories we've looked at there. We didn't have the time to drill right down to specific types of product. Within consumer electronics, you could probably say there's, maybe thousands of different types of product and sub-products and so on and so on. So important to think about how people look for your product online, what methods they use, what, if favorites, if having a favorite place is the best opportunity for you, then maybe online brand building and distribution is the right way. If it's about search, then of course that may be the focal point of your marketing strategy. But it does play a part. You know, make sure the advertising you do is contextual. If we're buying blind across the internet and just throwing our advertising out there, then arguably you're wasting quite a lot of it, and it potentially damaging to the brand. My previous job, I worked at Microsoft, and we had a social network called Pixo, which was a site for teenagers, 13 to 18, social network, so they could talk about bands and post pictures, etc. And we had an advertiser come along, and they were a telecommunicator, they were a mobile phone operator. And they just sort of threw their ads up on this thing. And then after a month, they withdrew them, saying, oh, we didn't achieve the right cost per acquisition. Now, I would argue that that's a youth club you're going to, is the best way to try and get people to buy your mobile phones, to just stick an advert there. There's a much better way of engaging with those people because of what they're doing. So it's not just saying you shouldn't be there, it's about how you should be there. There's an untapped opportunity for sales promotion. Sales promotion in the UK is worth about something like £15 billion. It's, you know, probably just under half of all marketing expenditure in the UK. It's not seen or talked about hugely, it's not very visible, but it goes on. And yet, online, that discipline hasn't really developed very much, which surprises me. You know, it's sort of done by different people, and there's a real opportunity there, particularly with mobile as well, mobile being that device that connects the offline world to the online world. And particularly from a retail perspective, that's a really important thing to think about. And finally, e-commerce should be part of the mix. You know, communication, information, entertainment. We have hundreds of thousands of sites and opportunities for advertisers to engage with customers and consumers in those mindsets and exhibiting those behaviors. But actually, retail and commerce is a hugely important part of our lives and our culture, and it's being underexploited. And with that, I am almost perfectly on time to say thank you very much, and I welcome any questions. Or you can just look at me, that's fine. Just wander up and down. So, hello. Sorry.
Hello. My name is Călin Rotoruș from Romania. You have a slide with intentions to buy in different places of different people. And speaking about social network, the intentions of, if you please can show the slide.
I think I know which one you mean. It was...
Yeah. In social network, the intention to buy entertainment is lower than consumer goods. And
do you mean this one?
The previous one.
This one?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, the intention to buy entertainment on social network is lower than clothes, phones, and so on. How do you explain? Because I feel that in social network, people are there to entertain. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very good point. This is their indicated intent to buy. So I would argue that actually people don't go to a social network to buy things. They go there to chat with their friends. They probably do buy music, absolutely. But in terms of the survey and the research we did, in terms of people's purchase intent, in a social network, they wouldn't necessarily think that's what they were going to do. That's what I would say in response. I think, you know, social networks have a role, massive role, hugely important. In fact, communication is the #1 activity online, so there's no getting away from the fact that it's very important. But the reason people go to a social network is not to buy things, it's to have a chat, to share ideas, to exchange stuff. And so if we're asking people about purchase intent, I think that probably reflects the results we've got there. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Oh, slow.
My question was, I noticed your recommendation on advertisers to have spent on online advertising. Advertisers usually find it difficult to find the proper target group. And what's your recommendation from this point of view? And the second question is related again to the target group, and how could we protect vulnerable social groups? If we're talking e-commerce, for example, how do we protect children?
Okay, so the first question, target groups. There are, there've always been an ability to target people online and in other media as well. You've got very broad ways of targeting, like demographics. So, am I between a certain age? Am I a certain job? Do I live in a certain area? So I'm a geographic. And those are the ones that a lot of media will employ. Online, and it depends who you speak to, but most increasing numbers of online publishers will offer behavioral targeting, which is in some way a little bit contentious. From eBay's perspective, we could sort of go beyond that, because what a lot of networks will offer, which is very good, are you want to speak to people who are interested in sport. So I can buy people interested in sport. I want to speak to someone who's 35 to 40 and likes to play golf. I can probably do that as well online. With what we do at eBay tends to be much more around purchase behavior, because what you tend to find, or I think, must be sure to put that in context, that's what I think, is that what people say online and down the pub and in the bar and to their friends is very different to what they do. And what they buy is a very good indication of their lives and lifestyles. So, for example, on eBay, we would offer a golf club who's trying to sell golf club membership. We would offer him an audience of people who bought golf clubs in the last month, which is more useful, I would think, than someone who's perhaps visited a sports site. For a car insurer, I would offer them someone who has just bought a car. If I am a baby food manufacturer, I would offer them an audience of people who've just bought a pram. And just sort of to offer target groups that are based around that. The other thing we do is we are starting to build up what we call keyword personas. So we look at all the search behavior across eBay, and sort of 500 million different searches, and we can start to group these searches around brands. So we can tell someone like Nike, we can tell them who their audience on eBay is, and because we have such a large audience that's very indicative of the market, we can tell them what else they buy, how often they buy it, what other brands they like, where you can find, so it starts to build a really interesting picture. So there are different ways of doing this, and if you are struggling to find a business locally that will do something like that, then come and talk to me, because I'll try and find out for you. And the second point was protection, wasn't it? So this is to do with fraud. Yeah? Okay, so, as in every country, there are people who are trying to, scam. I received an email the other day from Nigeria who told me that I was the proud recipient of £35 million. And that if I could just give them my bank details, they could transfer the money. Of course, I immediately replied, fuck off. So, there's lots of scams. All I can say is that, companies like, eBay again, we have PayPal, which is designed to provide a secure transactional service. all the major internet players, you know, Amazon, eBay, Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, they're all working very hard to combat fraud. I think you're not going to eradicate it. All you can do is work with the police and the authorities to make it safer, as we do in the offline environment too. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Before I get thrown out. I'm running out of time, see. This gentleman.
Hello.
Yes. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Koyan Atanasov. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask that, but since you're the only eBay representative around here, I can just go ahead.
Yeah, just throw fruit. It's fine.
I know, yeah. When can we expect eBay.bg? Do you have any information about that?
No, I don't, unfortunately. I know that we have, I think what we've done in the past is where, I know in some of the territories in Europe we have a sort of, we have a site in Switzerland which is used by the Belge and Luxembourg as well. I think we did have a site in Poland, which unfortunately we've now, or rather we haven't got rid of the site, we've got rid of the office. I can't answer quite. I don't actually know,
Okay,
but I think, I mean, the point to make is that, you know, eBay is always looking at every market. They've got a very broad distribution globally. They, you know, probably about 10 territories in Europe, Southeast Asia, Australasia, Philippines, North and South America. I think it's only a matter of time as markets mature that, you know, a business like eBay will look to invest.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Is that it? No, one more.
Just
Sorry.
one more. My name is Konstantin Mikhailov. I would like to ask you, based on your insightful observations, where would you place the comparison shopping sites in that diagram we have before us now? Because you have, so far you have your research based on the shopping websites.
Yeah, no,
search engines.
it wasn't. Yeah, it was all about e-commerce and shopping sites. So comparison sites would probably be in there. I can find out for you definitely, but I'm pretty sure they are. Okay, because it's a retail environment, so we didn't specifically do it on eBay because we wanted to make sure it was market friendly. So it was looking at e-commerce as a broader, and it would sort of again make very much, you know, good sense that those results would make them in the same.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. You did mention that eBay started proposing a service similar to AdWords. Aren't you a little bit worried that other shopping sites or online auctions would take away from your consumer?
Well, I'm sure we are. I'm sure, you know, they are competitors. So, you know, we keep an eye on our competitors like every business does. I think the fact that we've managed to continue to grow our audience and the dwell time they spend on us is phenomenal. I'll give you a good example, actually. Amazon is a very big site. It's a very successful site. The dwell time in the UK on Amazon per month is around, I think it's about 20 minutes, okay, which is okay. eBay is over 2 hours. So there's a different shopping experience going on there. And I think, you know, the market has got room for much, you know, many more retailers. There's plenty of online retailers already who still use eBay as a distribution channel because they recognize it's an important place for them to be. So I'm sure we do keep an eye, but I'm sure, you know, we're confident we're doing a good job already. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. I've got 40 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of this panel. Thank you for your attention and thank Mr. Marks for the great presentation.
Thank you very much.
You can use the right exit.